The story begins with the guy was in the same bed with a girl and hung over her, panting heavily. Ostensibly undressing, he said that today Eliza was not trembling, but the girl behaved modestly. Kissing her neck, he asked if she was already used to it. But it was obvious that this was far from the case. The girl hugged him and unconsciously scratched her back because she was very embarrassed and she did not know what to do. While she felt a man's kisses on herself, she thought that perhaps these embrace would be the last. After all, some time ago, Eliza sat on her knees in front of the throne of the emperor, decided to make an important statement. Candid into shackles, the girl laid her hand on her chest and stated that she wears a child under the heart of a Reget. It was a delusional lie in the name of her salvation, but she stated with tears in her eyes that she would give birth to a child, so he gave her the last chance, because of which in the end they will be happy, only so that she could survive. Then the man stated that they use each other by mutual agreement to solve personal problems. They both agreed that it would be just a marriage under a contract that would not carry anything personal. However, Eliza was worried that recently there was no news about pregnancy, and this is bad. After all, this means that she did not fulfill the terms of the contract, because of which she can again be sentenced to death. Eliza made a decision, after which she stroked Reget on the head, thanking him for trying to save her. She sincerely hopes that he will be free and forget about her. But now it is very dangerous to stay here. The only thing she regrets, it must be that she could not understand her feelings for him. The next day, a doctor ran into the room, congratulating His Highness on the fact that his wife is pregnant. However, she did not have time to agree, after which she froze and stopped short. Thanks why he is without a mood. The man held a letter in his hands, which said that this was only a marriage under a contract, and this does not mean anything more. Therefore, she can leave at any time when the promised 6 months will expire. So she left, although she wears a child. And in this child his blood flows, so he crushed the letter, ordering immediately to unhook the entire territory of the possessions. With such poor health, she could not go far, so she needs to find Her Highness right now, and not to hesitate. Elizabeth Aseka, no matter how she tried to hide, her place next to him, and now her departure was a stupid decision. 700 years ago, the time when the rage of the dragon covered the continent, 5 wizards betrayed their mentor. They decided to protect people using the knowledge gained from the dragon to use them only for the good. As a result, they managed to independently defend themselves from him in the future. They managed to protect people and pacify the dragon. This country has become a beloved and revered on the whole continent, and the name of the holy morning Argan is the name of it. However, soon this glory was trampled by the hooves of the barbarian kingdom, which quickly walked south from the north. They trampled everything into small pieces, and the noble princess of this great empire, which was on the run. This was the princess and was Elizabeth, behind which there was now a pursuit. She heard the warriors urge her to grab her. The girl clearly understood that if she was caught, then she was the end, therefore, so that it does not become, she needed to run further. Every day, a whirlpool of fate lies in wait for her, which is about to dizzy, demolishing the princess from his feet. Meanwhile, in the Banella military camp, the soldiers received an urgent order to kill Sir Roderick. The killer was a woman from Argan, so it was necessary to find her and bring her here alive or dead. In the end, the place where she managed to escape turned out to be a military camp of the enemy, and one of the tents. In addition, a few hours ago, one of the men asked how she made her way into the camp without fear in her eyes. Then he squeezed her hands tightly, asking if she was a refugee from Argan, because her white hair is definitely talking about this. Smiling maliciously, the soldier became interested in whether the princess, whom they are looking for now, also beautifully escaped. Elizabeth realized that it was necessary to somehow use magic, because this is her only chance to get out of here. At that very moment, they were illuminated by a bright light, after which a sharp and deaf cotton that dumbfounded and frightened the girl. Blooded by blood, she asked herself what it was, because she did not even touch the magical circle with her finger. In any case, enemy wars died before her eyes, and if she is caught, she will not be able to leave here alive. However, there is a way that could be much better than if it were killed by the enemies hunting for her. Having fallen to his knees, her hands trembled, touching the press on her leg, and Eliza thought about committing suicide. She remembered her brother's words that with the help of circles, You can cause simple protective and attacking spells. To use a magic circle, she just needs to put a hand on him and pronounce his name. The one on the left ankle must try to use as little as possible, because it is dangerous. The girl wanted to object, but he said that even if she became a slave, better alive than dead here. Unable to stand it, Elizabeth grabbed his back, said that he did not want, and with tears in his eyes asked to go together. She admitted that she was not as excellently owned by magic as he, but she would definitely not be able to cope alone. Andre replied that he was Emperor Argan. Therefore, no matter what happened, he must defend the imperial palace. Suddenly, he enclosed her in the dome, saying that if she survives, it will mean that Argon was not amazed. While Elizabeth tried to get out, knocking on the dome, her brother asked to remember this, and not to forget his advice. In the end, he smiled, asking him to survive, and then come and equip him with a grave worthy of the emperor. His eyes filled with tears when he looked at his sister for the last time, enveloping her with a warm and loving smile. And now the girl thought that now she was the only member of the imperial family Argan, and the heiress of the throne. For the sake of Andre, she should survive at all costs, because only in this way she can fulfill his last desire. But first, you need to get out of here and go to the Regal, the ally of Argan. She is sure that they will help her there. But as soon as Eliza decided to get out of the tent, someone walked in her direction, asking the Archduke whether he was inside. The girl shuddered, after which she wanted to leave, but did not have time, since the warrior entered the tent, looking around. Looking around, Elizabeth tried to understand. Unless someone was in a tent besides her, she still has not noticed anyone. A man entered the tent. "I ask what kind of hype?" Someone shouted that a woman from Argan had killed Roderick. Elizabeth, completely stained with blood, looked at the man whom she knew was the Archduke Kristan. 3 years ago was a festive banquet in honor of Emperor Argan Adre, where many noble persons gathered. The emperor himself, putting his hand on his chest, turned to his sister with a smile, asked if she feels good. Then he touched her cheeks, offering her to just relax in his room, but Elizabeth decided to refuse. Indeed, due to the fact that he constantly hides her, and they walk all sorts of incomprehensible rumors that interfere with her a little. The girl was unhappy, asked, "Do the older brother and his twin sister be such a relationship?" She wanted to add something else, but immediately stopped short, translating a surprised look at one of the venerable guests. Andre was also surprised to say that this was Reget Kristan, the captain of the Knights of Banella, which is in the north. People whispered that, although he is the pivot brother of the emperor, he did not have a drop of imperial blood. The concubine of the emperor's past is not clear from whom she gave birth to, but he made a great contribution and became the Archduke. There was a strange feeling, because of all the conversations and rumors, that the brother had an incomprehensible origin. However, the Archduke wanted to prove his significance to everyone, arranging bloody massacres with his enemies. Everyone calls him the god of war or the guard dog of the emperor, but this does not mean that he is a cruel person. Be that as it may, with confidence, we can say that he is one who does not want to have anything in common with them. And now Eliza thought that Viti had her at the banquet that day. She would immediately guess that she was Princess Argane. At that very moment, they both turned around when they heard that someone was carrying an urgent report of His Highness. The girl's heart stunned when she realized that it was all over, and in the end, she would die like this, surrounded by the enemy. Having closed her eyes and cries, she mentally told her brother that she would soon join him in the next world. Suddenly, Reget ordered her to leave here, but the girl could not believe her ears, because of which she asked. Elizabeth looked at the man in surprise, not understanding why he decided to let her go and let him escape. Suddenly, he knelt down, greeting Her Highness Princess Argan, thereby shocking her. Getting slightly, he asked if she could forgive him for this unpleasant situation. A couple of minutes later, the Reget began to wet a rag, saying that it is not good, that it has such clothes, everything is in the blood. Then he turned around, asked if he could touch her body, but she did not fully understand what he had in mind. Then she lowered her head, noting that her clothes and skin was covered with the blood of a recently killed soldier. Then she realized that something clearly came out of her body. Only how? Because she did not use the magic circle. While Eliza was thinking about this, her voice of the Archduke distracted her, who was still standing in front of her with a wet rag. In embarrassed look, The girl replied that she was giving him permission because she herself did not want to walk blooded. The man apologized, after which he began to wipe her face and neck, those places on which spray of blood fell. Taking care of the touch, she thought that this was not the attitude that should be directed towards the enemy. At that very moment, the girl decided that perhaps she would be able to leave here alive if the Archduke helped. After a couple of minutes, the man said that he finished. Elizabeth thanked him for such invaluable help. Then the Archduke ordered Sir Reuben to go in. He immediately obeyed, and sadness immediately appeared on Elizabeth's face. The knight in the armor, entering the tent, immediately asked displeasedly what he was busy here all this time. But when he drew attention to the girl in the company of the captain, his seriousness immediately gave way to surprise. Reuben, in complete shock, pointed a finger at the woman, saying loudly that it was she who killed Sir Roderick. Reget, with a calm face, asked to show his respect for Her Highness the Princess. He immediately stopped. The captain explained that the last member of the imperial family Argan, Reuben immediately froze in a stupor. At that very moment, the man looked at her, saying that during her last path, he should show courtesy. Half an hour later, Elizabeth sat on the bed, glancing at the plates with the food that was provided to her. She tried to understand how she was after such words. If they were going to kill her, they could do it right away. She shuddered, hearing that someone asked that this woman was true the last member of the imperial family Argan. The guard outside asked that this is the twin princess that the emperor hid, but then they should kill her. He was replied that His Highness sent the postal pigeon to the emperor to find out about further actions, and he needs to follow the words, because you can't rudely handle the members of the imperial family Argan. He replied that everyone was talking about Argan, but they themselves forget that it was the empire that fell from their hand. Since the emperor is dead, the Argan is practically destroyed, but they cannot be underestimated because there are myths about Argan. These were myths that they protected the continent from the dragon, thereby giving freedom to all the inhabitants of the empire. At that time, Eliza thought that Andre was the only family for her and her steel shield. Now he is not. And those last words became like a will for her, and in the end she survived alone, but it is not known whether for a long time. Now there was no time to cry, and you need to pull yourself together in order to reason sensibly and soberly, despite the situation. First of all, it is necessary to find information about Banella. Perhaps someone from here will be able to save her life. The guards said that it would be possible to return soon, but on the return of the Archduke will be very difficult. When asked why, they answered him that His Majesty was finding fault with the Archduke at a meeting, no matter what happened. He just wants a healthy child to be born as soon as possible, because of which he will receive the right to inherit. It would be very disappointing if such a bloodline sunk into oblivion, but in any case, he is an unusual person. Suddenly, Eliza shuddered, hearing the question if at least one woman who could give birth from a semi-prankoon. The half-pranakons that she read in books were young creatures that could not describe people. Weak intellects are low social skills. They are the ability to control the madness of the dragon, which flows through the veins. In addition, they have simply a monstrous appearance, which is why it seems dangerous for ordinary people. Elizabeth could not believe that the Reget is really a semi-gorgon, since it was not like it. 5 days later, the night reigned over a military camp, and there was silence and tranquility everywhere, not hinting at anything. That evening, the Reget entered Eliza, welcoming the princess, and next to him was a girl with a tray in her hands. Elizabeth understood everything when she noticed the objects brought for suicide princess of the fallen empire. Sitting in bed, she asked if such manners should be observed, because everything could be solved much easier. The Archduke replied that the emperor had come from His Majesty, and now he decided to read it. The emperor decided to give the last chance to Princess Argan independently end his life. Eliza thought whether to end her with honor or wait for what would be brought to the capital and beheaded to everyone. A man with an indifferent look invited her to choose, but the girl was silent and was in no hurry to give an answer. The ability to choose death itself is reverence. Permission to commit suicide is the most luxurious death. Such a proposal can only receive a family member of the defeated empire and keep his face in front of his enemy. However, she needs to survive in some way, but as under such circumstances she can retain her face. Reget concluded that such a message of the emperor so they should do everything as he said. Eliza, looking at the Archduke, thought that this man was the most powerful high-ranking in this camp, and in his native state he is called to acquire a successor, because he inherited the blood of the dragon. Then the girl got out of bed, asked if she did not commit suicide here, and whether they would take her to Banella. The man replied that if she did not do this, then he would do so, because His Majesty ordered her to bring her. For some time, Elizabeth thought, after which she looked at the dagger lying on the tray and reached for him. She decided to clarify whether she would definitely be brought intact and safety, to which she received an affirmative answer. It was unclear whether this rope is strong or rotten. One can only hope that the Emperor is a principled person. Eliza hoped that he could restrain his word, so she firmly stated that she would not commit suicide. If she selects this option, she understands that he will need to take her to the capital intact. Suddenly, she waved a dagger, after which she pierced her shoulder, thereby dumbfounding the Reget. Bleeding, the girl smiled, saying that he must definitely take her to Banella, no matter what happened. After these words, it began to get dark in her eyes, and the princess herself began to lose consciousness while Reget called her. Elizabeth firmly decided that so that she did not have to do and endure, she would survive, despite all the troubles. After all, she is the last member of the imperial family of Argan, who should fulfill the promise to his own brother. An hour later, the man was sitting near the bed of Eliza, who was lying unconscious after it hit himself with a knife. Looking at her, he asked himself why, every time he wanted to leave, she causes herself a meaningless pain. The princess does not intend to die a noble death, but that if she is just not going to die, perhaps she wants to lure him to her side so that he helps her, risking her reputation and title. Who would have thought that she would use the imperial order and force him to take her to the capital? He remembered how people whispered on one of the banquets about the fact that this girl is a princess, about whom rumors go. When everyone first saw her, they realized why the emperor carefully hid her from human eyes. After all, she is very beautiful, and at that moment, the Reget also realized this, and on his face it was clearly written. While he was thinking about this, the question was heard from the awakened girl, unless he wants to tell her anything. Looking up, the Archduke noticed that Elizabeth completely became conscious and raised herself, languidly looking at him. The girl turned to him again, with a suspicious look, said that he knew that she was not sleeping. After that, she decided to clarify if this was so, but the man said nothing, deciding to withstand a short pause. Eliza thought to her that he always seeks to avoid any conversations with her. However, the girl so differently wanted to start a dialogue with him, so she had to improvise and not be silent. Then she asked if she needed to leave another trace of a knife on her body so that he would talk to her. Reget replied that she should know how to take care of herself. She replied that when she arrives in Banella, she would be killed. Then the man decided to take her hand, but Elizabeth reacted faster, and the first grabbed his hand. Standing her fingers, she raised her head. Out of a serious tone, she asked if he was married. The Archduke was surprised at this issue. However, he did not answer immediately, trying to understand why she needed this information. He replied that he was single, and the girl suggested that many would like to marry him, but he was still not married. Reget replied that she did not know if she knew, but various rumors throughout the continent spread about him. He does not know if his parent could give his precious daughter to marry a man who is not even a man. After all, he is the one in whom the blood of the dragon flows. Not only is he not a person, it's still hard for him to control himself. Having inherited the madness of the dragon, he can restrain himself only with the help of frequent periodic killings. This is a damned race. But the girl calmly said that often rumors are very exaggerated and unreliable. She heard that Emperor Banella wanted him to have an heir, and therefore the knight must execute the order. Reget Princess that he does not have such a hobby, to kill a woman in order to see his heir. He does not even want to see blood on the bed, as this does not bring him joy. And Eliza flinched from these words. The man felt the trembling of her hands, mentally asking why she was so frightened, and did not let go of her hand. Suddenly, she said that for an ordinary woman, it would be very dangerous, but other outcomes are possible. The ancestor of Argan was a student of the dragon, but whether he knows that the power of wizards flows in the Argan family, the Archduke decided to ask if she was a sorceress. Elizabeth replied that yes and no. She explained that there were a lot of myths about the dragons that he had to hear about the imperial family. Reget understood that we were talking about dragons, dragon students, and semi-pranks, and felt what she was leading to. Somehow this woman has something in common with him, but at the same time is the exact opposite. She must think that she can get sympathy or pity, finding common features with him. However, the question remained why she was, because the fate of this girl was already a foregone conclusion from the emperor. After all, she was already proposed to carry out the most worthy death that is appropriate for her nobility. However, why did she decide to follow such a difficult path, trying to survive and get out of here? Suddenly, the Archduke said that he would not help her, because of which Eliza was scared, and her heart pounded frantically. He also added that he even has no intention of helping her so that she would not speak or invent. Therefore, he politely asked not to dare to allow, and thoughts about some kind of stupidity during its transportation. Eliza asked if she had the same if she kneels before him, but he considered it absurd. But even if she will be a elbow and beg, he will simply experience an even stronger confusion than now. He does not want her to kneel, but calmly reacts to the fact that she will commit suicide before his eyes. Eliza said that she understood everything, but asked him to be next to her until this whole procession was completed. Looking into his eyes, she with hope asked not to leave here even for a minute, so that she was calmer. The Archduke nodded, agreeing, because it was the order of the princess, which he was able to fulfill. Elizabeth smiled, after which she apologized for worrying him, because he probably has a lot of his business. But, as he said, she can die at any moment, so it is important for her to be near this moment. After that, the girl kissed his hand, asking, "Is it not the youngest that he can do now?" Closer to the night, the man still sat near her bed, waiting for the princess to fall asleep, and he began to fall asleep. The sudden Elizabeth began to turn in a dream, naming the name of her brother, who was with her in difficult times. At that very moment, the girl saw a silhouette that turned into her good André, whom she immediately recognized. Gently touching his cheek, she said that if she had become an empress, she would have died, and he would live and could help to make the Argon does not fall, and continue to be a prosperous empire. Because he is one of those who achieve everything, in spite of everything, putting impossible efforts to this. The guy took her hand, answering his sister that no one without her, since they were always together, and went hand in hand. Then he smiled, asking her to listen carefully to what he would say now, because it is very important. Reflected in her eyes, André said that she was much more surprising and stronger than he thinks, and she should know that, because she is the great Princess Argan, who deserves universal reverence and respect for subjects. Eliza thought that if he knew what she had a plan now, he would despise her for the rest of her life. With tears in her eyes, she said that she would definitely take care of his tombstone, make him, and then leave. After that, the girl closed her eyes, falling asleep tightly, not talking for the rest of the night, sniffing peacefully. After 5 minutes, the Rajate said that he had heard about her illness, but did not think that everything was so sad. Suddenly, the girl began to turn in a dream, saying that she was cold, after which she sweated and began to breathe heavily. Having held his hand, the man thought that, one way or another, in the fluctuations of emotions, there is always his own reason. Despite the fact that the princess first saw the princess 3 years ago, she still remained in her head as a memory, that she is a precious stone, to which he would never dare to touch, as if he did not want. It seems that they met in the most terrible period of his life, which made this situation the most rainbow. A woman who shone so much as if the sun itself was now next to him and slept peacefully. Perhaps these emotions are only nostalgia for those days when they so unexpectedly collided with each other. The Archduke immediately touched her cheek, felt that the whole body was on, and she had a heat. When he tried to undress her a little, Elizabeth woke up, saying that he was one of those who did not understand anything. Reget immediately removed his hand, asking if she woke up because of him, because it turns out that he prevented her from bed. Suddenly, Elizabeth pulled him to her, immediately blushing, but she had to tell him something important. Breathing heavily, she said that when they come to the capital, he should not be very angry with her for it. He must assume that this is her last attempt to get out of the paws of fate that she was destined. Looking her eyes, Reget replied that he did not understand what she had in mind, so he had nothing to get angry with her. Eliza replied that he could consider her crazy, but let her think what? She can have value. After these words, the girl lost consciousness and fell asleep on his chest, leaving the Archduke in complete confusion. The time spent with the princess flew quickly, and one day, at the dawn, the camp was assembled and ready to leave. Thus began a journey to Banella, which will last quite a long time, which will give time for thought. But more precisely, it was a journey to the faithful death of Elizabeth, which should be avoided at any cost. Closer to the night, they planned to break the camp to spend the night, and let the horses take a break from the road. Reget politely said that he would prepare her a place to relax, so she should wait a bit here. Eliza awkwardly looked away, answering that she really doesn't care where to relax, since she was already used to it. The man retorted this by the fact that, if her temperature rises again, their trip would have to be postponed. The girl sadly said that because of her, the planned all the time was postponed. He replied that this was not so. Elizabeth looked inquiringly at him, without believing his words. The thing just said the very opposite. At that very moment, she looked at the soldiers who stared at her. But there was a feeling that everything was avoided. At first, she decided that this was due to the fact that she looked dirty, after which she began to inspect herself. Suddenly, she remembered that on the way they saw a lake. Now it was like salvation from other people's eyes. Suddenly, Reget overtook her, asking what happened, and why she decided to leave the camp on her own. Elizabeth replied that it seemed to her that there was a lake in the forest, so she thought that perhaps she could wash herself there. Suddenly, the man replied that he would spend her, and at the same moment the dumbfounded looks of the soldiers rushed at him. The girl clarified whether he was going to take her to where she would wash her. He answered in the affirmative. At first she wanted to refuse, because she thought that he was doing this out of experiences that she was going to execute her. Suddenly, Elizabeth fell silent and froze, thinking that perhaps this is a good chance and a plan to save life. It would be better if as many people as possible saw them together, so that rumors began to spread. The girl suddenly changed her decision, and with a confident look answered that then they would go together. After 10 minutes, they were near the lake. The man touched the water, saying that she was very cold here. The Archduke did not forget to warn her, so that she would be extremely attentive, so that the water would not fall on her wound. Eliza began to slowly unfasten the shirt, thinking that I needed to try something to check. Reget Kristan has not changed a lot since she first met him, but you need to make sure. She remembered the heat emanating from the strong body that held her that day. She still remembers this. When the man suddenly turned his head, he saw a practically naked and embarrassed girl. Reget turned to her, because of which Elizabeth shuddered and blushed, not expecting him to speak with her so quickly. Then he went to her, pulling her shirt back, and with a calm look, saying that the wind was still cold. Elizabeth looked away, clarifying that she wants to wash the whole body, because it seems to her that she is too dirty. The Archduke fastened her shirt, answering that not even 3 days had passed since her temperature slept. Then he leaned over and politely asked the princess not to subject him to such tests. After all, he already made it clear that he could not help her, so you cannot even try to do something. The girl immediately moved away from him, looking down with despondency, realizing that all her attempts to survive are in vain. None other than Princess Argan appeared before the commander-in-chief of the enemy state in an obscene form. She still shows herself miserable. This person still remains an honest and noble knight. Reget said that there is moss on the stones, so there is slippery, and tomorrow they will arrive in the village where there is a hotel. She needs to wait one day, because to transfer plans for her discretion will be hard in their situation. But he wanted to add something else. But Elizabeth interrupted him, saying that he would only do his hands and legs. The man did not say anything else, letting the lady to the water. There, in turn, he was awkwardly looking back in his direction. She did not know whether such a noble person could forgive her for what she was going to do in Banella. Now, the mid-March, a month and a half has passed after the Knights of Banella were captured. And now, finally, they arrived in the Banella Empire, located in the northwest of the continent, as planned. From afar, it looked beautiful. You could stand here for hours and watch the incredible beauty of the city. When they entered the city, an assistant ran up to the Archduke, who was clearly concerned about something. The worried guy did not know where to start, while the Reget asked him to calm down and report everything. The soldier explained that Yanok Seekit arrived, the fourth prince of the kingdom. He did not know that they would arrive in the castle. At that very moment, a man came up to them, asking a menacing voice whether he was the Archduke Kristan. The red-haired Yanok held out his hand with a smile and asked how he managed to catch Princess Argan. Then he looked at the girl who trembled and stood with his back, and he asked if she was standing. The girl clearly knew that the empire was the angle of Argan, and it was they who attacked their house then. Reget made his head and saw the trembling Elizabeth, who was afraid to meet with Yanok. Yanok said that he had done the whole way to the imperial castle in order to see its beautiful face. But it so happened that she eventually escaped from there, because of which they were left with nothing. But now they met again. They say that this feminine beauty needs to be seen at least once before his death. It is a pity that he could not succeed. Therefore, he turned to his brother, the owner of Banella. It was at his request that the emperor sent the letter, and he asked that she would come here whole, and not a single hair fell from her head during transportation here. And since the Archduke himself grabbed her for him, he will be very happy to accept this gift right now from hand to hand. Then he held out his hand to grab Elizabeth, but the girl did nothing to pull away. She mentally asked to touch her, because if he touches her, something terrible could happen. Then the magic circle will react, and it will die. But at the same second, Janak was stopped and asked to move away. Before Eliza, a man immediately stood up, who closed her with his body, hinting that it was impossible to touch her. When asked what he was doing, Reget replied that he received an order to bring the princess, but there was no order to transfer her. They will need permission from His Majesty Emperor so that they can take the prisoners captured on the battlefield. While the Emperor does not order him to give the princess, the prisoner will belong to Banella, and more specifically to him. After that, the man held out his hand to the princess, who did not expect such an act from his invader. Having acquired her by the shoulder, the Archduke said that they could go, since they do not need to report to this man. Looking after them, Yanok gazed his teeth and trembled, saying that they would still look at who owes what and to whom. First of all, Reget came to Emperor Neuer Erdrich, who said with a smile that he had tried well. Why did he begin to be interested in whether the princess rebelled? This duke replied that there was nothing like that. Neuer said that since we were talking about the noble family of Argan, he thought that she had long committed suicide. If she came here, it seems that she has some kind of hidden motive that she wants to use. Reget also knew about this, but did not dare to voice his guesses to the emperor, so as not to substitute her. He remembered how Eliza, taking his hand, asked him to be next to her, and not even leave for a minute. Then she whispered in his ear that when they would come to the capital, he should not be very angry with her and her words. The emperor stated that the corner demanded that they give the princess. Perhaps he himself wants to cut her throat. Reget was surprised, while Neuer added that, after that, they want to make a scarecrow from it for a fun. Be that as it may, she is the last person from the imperial family, so they want to hang her in the square. After that, they want to transfer the body to the question, when this happens. The emperor replied that exactly 5 days later. The Archduke thought that there was practically no time. He did not know that he was going to come up with Eliza to avoid execution. Neuer said something young emperor such a proud could survive and preserve the Argan state. Then he began to reason, so that he would do in his place, when he suddenly looked at the sown face of Reget. The emperor decided to turn to him, ask why he is distracted by other thoughts, being in front of him. The Archduke, sitting on his knee, replied that he hadn't thought about anything, and now he only listened carefully to his speech. Neuer said that his brother is a very honest person. Therefore, if he tries to lie, it is very noticeable to him. However, Reget still continued to say that he did not understand what he was talking about here. The emperor called him a stubborn. Suddenly, Neuer thought sharply, asking if nothing happened to the princess during their trip. The Archduke first did not answer, after which he stated that nothing had happened, but he had to lie. The emperor thought for several seconds about his short answer, but still decided to believe his commander-in-chief. Then, he asked him to go and relax today. Even if he is a dragon, he still needs a vacation, like everyone else. The man was about to leave. The emperor stopped him, remembering that he wanted to say something else about him. He asked to get acquainted with the bride in his office, so as not to force him to wait. Then Neuer frowned, asking not to forget why he put him in a high position. When they were younger, Neuer said that the dragon with human qualities has good heredity. They cannot miss such a perspective, so they must train him to make him a winner. Then he asked the little Reget that he was holding a coin in his hands, whether he would take his hand right now. And now the Reget replied that even if you get married, it will still be difficult to see the heir because of the problematic genus. Even if a woman can stand his seed, she will die before he gives birth, and he does not want to see this. The emperor said that he would send him strong women, so it will be necessary to at least try to do this. It was his mother who gave birth to him. This is precisely what the proof is that everything is possible, despite rumors. At that very moment, the Archduke rose and stated that he would go to rest. Such behavior outraged the emperor. Neuer said after him that if he doesn't want to marry, then let him grow old and die alone. Walking along the corridor, the man thought about her brother's words that his mother coped when she could give birth to him. It was a woman who could not be born, despite the long birth that looked just terrible. And also the monster, which was born as a result of the fact that with his own hands he broke her stomach. So all the half-pranks are born, and so all women die, without exception, who gave birth to semi-pranks. That is why he is stubborn, because he simply does not want to become a witness to this, and that was what annoyed him. Then he decided that it was better to return to the mouth until this whole situation completely filled his mind. But first, you need to go there at least once to visit the captive and find out if everything is in order with her. However, the man did not know what to do when they met, because he finally refused her any help. Meanwhile, Elizabeth sat in a dungeon, and her hands were chained in shackles attached to the wall with a chain. She sadly remembered how the Reget helped her a little before imprisoning the girl in custody. Having removed the handcuffs from her, the man carefully examined the gusts on his wrist, which he really did not like. Then he decided to wrap them with a cloth so that in the future she would not be so painful, and the wounds heal many times faster. And now, looking at her hands, Eliza remembered his words that the load on her wrists would decrease. She concluded that this is a man who is unrealistic to understand, because he does everything opposite to what he says. Suddenly, horror appeared on her face, because of which she shuddered when she heard a familiar voice hailing her. A man who entered the prison said that Emperor Argan also had a beautiful face, like her. However, it could not be compared with her beauty. Yanok smiled angrily while he said all this to the girl. Elizabeth immediately recognized him, and the man replied that this was a great honor, that she could remember his name. Then he decided to ask if this was true, but the girl did not understand what he was talking about and decided to ask again. Yanok asked not to build a fool out of himself, because he knows that the emperor poured magic into it before his death. Elizabeth was dumbfounded by such a statement, but they could immediately believe that the brother had poured magic into it. Most likely, he has in mind a magic circle, but only he and Andre can see him. But Yanok found out about it. Suddenly, Yankee took the key, saying with a smile that he needed to check it before she died. He was very interested in whether she had magical abilities that would be very useful to him. When the man opened the doors, extended his hand to her, Elizabeth thought that something needed to be done urgently. Suddenly, a man who had threatened her before, unconscious, fell to the ground, stunned by a rather strong blow. As this girl raised her head, she noticed a Reget, who decided to visit her very in time, and thereby helped. However, she was surprised at his visit, because so far I have not understood the true intentions of this man. He was worried about the prisoner, who would soon be hanged, and did not let him damage his wrists, as if it would change something. In addition, he just saved him from Barbar, so that he did nothing with her, although he could calmly not come. She did not know if he did it because of the emperor's instructions, or was it because of a long night to help the weak. But whatever it was, Elizabeth politely thanked him, because of which the man froze in surprise. At that very moment, she mentally apologized to him, thinking that she would never let him go and keep him. A few days later, the day of Elizabeth's execution came. The weather on this day was simply excellent and warm. Reuben ran to the Archduke, saying that it remained to load the award that His Majesty passed him. The Reget agreed with a calm look, answering that they would leave immediately as the whole baggage would be loaded. The assistant, with a surprised look, asked if he wanted to go to the square. Hearing a response question why, he rubs his head, specified that the execution of the princess will take place today, now noon, which means that everything will begin soon. In the morning, a huge crowd of people has already gathered in the square, for which this execution is only a funny performance. After all, the most beautiful women of Grandel will take place, and this is a great topic for discussion among onlookers. Some expect a miracle, for example, the magical disappearance of the princess. But the Reget could no longer listen to it. He asked to stop carrying all nonsense and checking if they had forgotten something, because he did not plan to return. The dumbfounded Reuben asked if he was not going to go there, because he expected the Archduke to remain. The guy was surprised to explain that he accompanied her for almost 2 months, and all this time was next to her. He also thought that they had very close, intimate, and secret relations, about which almost the entire camp knew. The commander-in-chief asked not to waste time in vain and prepare for departure in the next hour. Seeing the calm face of the Archduke, Reuben mentally asked, was there really nothing between them? However, the Reget froze, after which he looked at the tower with the clock, where the bell rang, saying that it was already noon. With a slight sadness, Reget ordered to advance, but at that very moment he noticed a woman fled in their direction. The breathless maid loudly told His Highness that he needed to immediately come to the Emperor. She clarified that this applies to Princess Argan. When the man heard about this, his eyes widened in surprise. A little earlier, Neuer, looking at Elizabeth, said that he heard that she wanted to tell him something at the end. For a while, the girl was silent, as she tried to choose the words that she would have managed to avoid death. She is already too far from worthy death, although the inhabitants of Argan loved the princess without even seeing her face, and she could not achieve anything in order to somehow justify their expectations, because of which she was in this situation. As a result, the princess turned away from everyone and ran away, trying to escape alone, but she was simply obliged to survive. She must equip the grave for her brother, who died alone, as well as reassure the spirit of the people of Argan. Not hearing any answer, the emperor hurried her, because at that time she had to be executed. In recent months, this moment has imagined this moment for hundreds of times, but in reality, everything turned out to be worse. Then she gathered her will into a fist, after which she stated with a confident look that she was under the heart of the child of the Reget. The emperor could not believe his ears, because of which strong surprise involuntarily appeared on his face. He asked if he had just heard, or she said that she was conceiving a child from the Archduke himself. Sitting on his knees, Elizabeth replied that he heard everything correctly. That was what she wanted to tell him. Neuer could not believe that Reget spent the night with a woman on the battlefield, which did not look like him very much. However, looking at the awkward expression of the princess's face, perhaps this was true, although it was amazing. Then the emperor shuddered when he realized what situation he was in, because of which he was supposed to change his plans, after which he jerked, saying that he did not know if she had heard that the Erzduke Kristan is a midfield, and is she in the know that a person is not able to carry a semi-prakan in himself. In response, the girl shook her head. Then he asked how then she found out that she had a child, and whether there was any good evidence. Elizabeth replied that her twin brother was a wizard. She checked her body condition with magic. It is not as capable as a brother, but it can use a small amount of magic to evaluate the body. Touching upon a magic circle, she said that she could understand if something is clearly wrong with her body. When the girl's hand shone, Neuer asked, wasn't this a reason to temporarily avoid the death penalty that she was destined? Elizabeth dutifully closed her eyes and laid her hand on her chest, and answering that it was already solving His Majesty. However, the emperor said in a serious tone that this was not so, and the final decision would be behind the Archduke. After that, there was a creak of the door into which the Reget entered, which dumbfounded the girl who did not expect him. While the man was going towards the throne, Neuer asked him with interest if the princess told the truth about pregnancy. She silently went to Eliza, looking carefully at her, while the emperor demanded an answer from him. The Archduke politely asked to let him talk with the princess alone to discuss this. Neuer was indignant, loudly slapping his hands through the armrests, asking, is it really necessary now? At this time, the Reget bowed, answering that he would take this consent. Such insolent behavior was surprised by Elizabeth. The emperor wanted to shout something after them, but they had already left, after which he turned to Sir Reuben, which was nearby. He ordered him in detail to report what happened on the way to the capital between the princess and the Archduke. He could not miss the slightest, and tell everything so that he could figure out this difficult situation. When the Reget and Eliza moved a certain distance from the castle, the man loudly asked what she was planning. Having lowered her head, the girl asked to accept an apology, but the man replied that he did not need them. Then he repeated the question of why she lied, because she pulled him into this lie, which he learned only now. Elizabeth replied that he himself knew the reason, and having heard this, the Archduke shuddered, realizing that it was true. The girl added that she did not want to die. She needed to do something in order to survive, so she lied. Reget replied that she had to solve everything on his own, without drawing him, and there should be a more reasonable way. Eliza said that she could not choose another path, since this way out was the only thing that did not allow her to die. Then she asked with tears in her eyes that if she had chosen a different path, whether he would allow her to do it. The man replied that, be that as it may, if he knew that she was planning something, he would have thought about some option. However, the girl asked him not to lie, because she knew that he would have pretended to have heard nothing at all. He would simply ignore her, but more than once he told her that he was not going to help in anything. He assumed that she was already executed today in the square, even despite the little concern that he showed. Although it was a simple pity, he was still not going to save her, even having spent so much time with her. Emperor Banella desperately wants the heir to be born, so such a lie is necessary. Suddenly, Elizabeth said that therefore she would give birth to a child, and such a statement was dumbfounded by the Archduke. The girl strictly asked the man to use her to try to fulfill the long-awaited dream of the emperor. After all, he is very annoyed by the idea that he was constantly forced to conceive him from everywhere. Therefore, for him, such an opportunity is also not bad, and he should think about it and solve his problem in addition. The girl shuddered when she heard the question, whether she would give birth to a child to him. The Reget from shock even asked her. The man somehow smiled strangely, said that she had just said that she wanted to die with a terrible death. But does she understand why? Despite the fact that His Majesty is so longing a child, he is still not. If she knew everything from the very beginning, would not make such an offer. But now it's too late. Because she chose this path only for the sake of surviving, at that very moment he grabbed her by the wrist. Suddenly, he thought that even if he pressed a little on him, you can simply break all the bones. Then, the Archduke said that in her eyes, he looks like someone's arrogant, but the situation is much more complicated. Or maybe he does not understand something, because he does not have time to process everything that the girl says or thinks. Every time she sees him, she knows what he thinks about, and this fact is almost impossible to hide from her. But for some reason, every time on his face, he does not understand anything and tries to avoid responsibility. She apologized for stifling his honor, but the man repeated that he could not help her with anything. However, there was not a word that he would interfere with her to try to save his life. She must decide herself. In her place, he would simply strictly ask the emperor not to execute her in return for everything she can give. For example, some secrets of Argon, which are known only to her, treasures or myths that are associated with dragons. Eliza replied that she could sell herself and her dignity, but not the country that her brother and people protected. They put it on the end of their lives, so he does not dare to go to this exclusively for their salvation. Suddenly, the man asked if she had thought that noble suicide would be more worthy of the empire. Having lowered her head, Elizabeth thought that he believes that she had to die a beautiful death from the very beginning. And the words of this man are not false. Even if she tried to fight, she could still not change anything. Even if she returned to Argon, she still can't restore the empire. But there was hope. After all, Andre finally told her that if she survives, it will mean that Argon was not affected. After that, Elizabeth every day asked the same question as she could die after such words. Then she looked up, saying that she was exactly different from ordinary women, so she will try to endure the child. After all, although she is not as owned by magic as a brother, she can use some facilitating spells. Reget asked that if she could use magic, then why was it so easily surrendered to be taken? In addition, he has no desire to understand a woman who cannot really worry about his body. Having bowed, the man said that he would give her time again to think about everything, adding that they would see him tomorrow. Suddenly, he froze when Elizabeth replied that she did not need time to think, since she had already decided everything. She made a specific proposal, so the decision will only be followed by take it or refuse it. Without answering anything, the Archduke headed back to the palace in order to personally talk with the Emperor again. When he returned, Neuer was waiting for him in his place, with trepidation, interested in the results of the conversation with Eliza. He was only interested in one question, whether he spent the night with the princess, because of which she became pregnant. At first, Reget wanted to answer that this was not, after which he sighed heavily and fell silent, deciding not to rush. He thought about whether it was necessary to say that they shared one bed, but only because Eliza was unwell. Suddenly, his thoughts were interrupted by the Emperor, who laughed and stated that it was still and he slept with her. Reget wanted to make excuses, but Neuer said that he had just not hesitated for 5 seconds, which means that there was something. He also heard that they were constantly together all the way, although it seemed to him that he was an insensitive block. Realizing what happened here, the Archduke turned to Reuben, asking that he managed to tell His Majesty. The guy turned his head guiltily, answering that he had reported only what he saw and heard with his own eyes. They spent time together during the day and night for a month and a half, so he said everything as it was. Neuer ordered not to dare to lie to the Emperor, because he knows that he went to prison to the princess on the eve. He wanted to check the woman who hates his child. The Reget asked why he was called in this case. The Emperor replied that he already knew the exact answer when he opened the door and led the princess out of here, but there was a question. Therefore, he directed the imperial doctor to Princess Argan to say exactly whether she was pregnant. They will know this for sure only after examining the doctor, and until that time, he has all the reasons to doubt. The sudden Emperor asked if he was sure that this child was him. Reget asked what he had in mind. Neuer replied that the princess said that she seduced him. He was interested in when she had time, and whether it was true. After all, she was sharpened in the castle by her brother all the time. Does she know how to seduce men? In addition, there were rumors on Argan that the twins were more than just a brother and sister, which leads to some thoughts. Perhaps the Emperor, before his death, and his sister managed to conceive a child, and now she uses it. Suddenly, the Archduke abruptly interrupted him, in a severe tone, asking if he delays the name of Princess Argan. Neuer said that even if the princess lied to him, he does not think that he would tell her anything, not to slander. If she dared to lie, he will not let her die so easily. It will be better if he gives her a whole prince, and then the Gemini will meet again, only in the other world, in which case the problem will be resolved. We will lower his head. Reget said that he did not know how she lived in Argan before, but he had another opinion. According to his personal experience, the princess is clearly not one of those who are engaged in indecent and profligacy, especially with his brother. And judging by her state of health now, she is not just given everyday life, not to mention the rest. The Emperor decided to go to the end, ask if he wanted to say that the princess really bare his child. At that very moment, the Archduke confidently said that the princess had no other man. After the audience, the Reget went along the corridor, thinking about the dialogue with the Emperor and what he should do next. He thought that a person who had the highest status was at the most vivid embodiment of virtue, a woman who wanted to touch at least once in her life and endlessly look into her innocent eyes. She screamed that she did not want to die, and such stupid recklessness shocked him literally to the core. At that very moment, he asked Reuben where Princess Argan is now located. The subordinate first did not understand the question. He said in an uncertain tone that, most likely, she was in the western part along with the doctor to undergo an examination. The Archduke did not answer and turned sharply, heading in the direction where his subordinate pointed out. Reuben tried several times to hail him, but to no avail, since the man was mired in his thoughts about Eliza. Walking forward, the commander-in-chief decided that, in the end, he would do what she wanted from him initially. Meanwhile, Elizabeth was lying in the room, almost falling asleep, while the doctor arrived for her for examination. An elderly woman said that the pulse is too weak, so difficult to make her more accurate diagnosis. It is too exhausted, so the doctor finds it difficult to say something for sure, and it makes no sense to say approximately. Elizabeth replied that this is a feature of her body, but she does not affect her ordinary life. It was checked. Then the doctor said that she would take a blood sample from her, deciding that he could make a more accurate diagnosis. Putting her head on the pillow, The girl thought that since she took blood from her, and tomorrow everyone would know that she lied. This meant only that she had only 1 day left, and then they would either kill her or do something worse. When the night fell, a man entered the room, who put his hand on her forehead to check the temperature. Suddenly waking up, Eliza asked why he came to her in a dream, since he decided to help me. Then she added that he was right. She tried to survive with all her might when she had to disappear for a long time. When everything is opened, then she really will commit suicide, but so far she wants to enjoy life a little more. When Elizabeth opened her eyes again, the maid next to her gladly noticed that Her Highness woke up. The girl was afraid of the sudden appearance of an outsider, so she immediately asked who she was. The maid introduced herself to the Avesta, saying that from now on she would be her personal servant, and she could turn to her. Such a layout of events was very surprised by the princess, because why one who will die soon to give a personal maid? The maid, with a cute smile, added that she was ordered to fulfill everything that Her Highness would wish. Eliza immediately decided to ask who gave this order, but Ivest did not quite understand this question. However, she explained that of course His Highness Archduke, who took care of everything properly. The maid joyfully announced that the princess would soon become his wife, so he gave this order. A little later, the Erzherzog came to her, who pushed the curtains and calmly asked if she felt normal. He explained that she lay in bed for 3 days. However, it turned out that this fact was not at all surprised by Elizabeth. The girl replied that she had heard it from Ivista, although she thought she just fell asleep for a short while, all this from overstrain. Now she is in order. The man was worried about her condition, since such weakness was unusual for him. Then she looked at the man, saying that one way or another, that she was still alive, gives her great hope. Reget and replied that, as Her Highness said, to achieve something too troublesome and irritating, if he could free himself from the captivity of the emperor with the help of one transaction, it would be the best possible. Perhaps she is even a good option for this, so there is an opportunity to try to fulfill her venture. She is a descendant of the hero who defeated the dragon, and he is a half-breed who inherited the blood of this dragon. Perhaps she will be able to suppress the power of his blood? The girl replied that she was sure that this is what would happen. The Archduke confirmed His Majesty with the words that they spent the night together, and also bribed his doctor. Elizabeth said that for a start, she was grateful to him for the fact that he still decided to accept her difficult proposal. The man replied that she did not need to thank him, because they simply use each other by mutual agreement. Therefore, this is just a marriage under a contract, in which both parties should promote mutually beneficial. He invited her to create a marriage for 6 months, after which he asked if she agreed such mutually beneficial conditions. Eliza thought that the emperor was obsessed with the thoughts of the successor, and if her stomach was not rounded, he would suspect something. Therefore, she definitely needs to do as this man said, and get pregnant for at least 6 months. Elizabeth calmly replied that she agreed to accept this proposal, but the Archduke did not finish this. If something goes wrong, he plans to tell the emperor the whole truth, then her fate will depend on her. A cold look, an unyielding manner of speech. Another feeling that she experienced earlier comes from him. He must be so behaving after this deal, because she probably was very difficult for him, but she was ready for such a cold attitude, so she only had to tolerate a little. The man said that Kristan, Lotir, and he would protect it for 6 months, so that it would not happen. The girl called out to him, but immediately fell silent. After a couple of seconds, Reget asked if she wanted something to tell him. Elizabeth blushed, with an awkward look, saying that he realized that he might not like a lot. After all, he will probably have a hard time with an unwanted woman, but he must promise that he will not reject her. For some time, Reget answered nothing, because of which the girl looked at him with a questioning look. Suddenly, the man grinned, answering that he was very glad that she was aware that children did not fall from the sky. Having embarrassed and turned away, Elizabeth said that he was not so stupid, and she knew all this very well. The Reget said that if she is worried, he could record their obligations and responsibility for failure to comply. Eliza was surprised, but immediately got out of bed, after which she went to the table and picked up the feather and paper. Then she asked if they should sleep 5 times for one period, and in those days when the doctor advises. She began to count that 5 times a month. It was 30 times in 6 months. Such numbers made the Archduke startle. Then she thought that this was very few, after which she asked him whether it was necessary to double this number by half. Looking at his face expression, she decided that it was better to increase 3, but she never received an answer. Closing his face with his hand, the Reget sighed heavily, asking her to write as many times as the conditions will allow. He does not really want it to be like his homework, where an exact number of times will be indicated. Blinding and embarrassed, the girl quickly agreed, deciding to do just that so as not to suffer. The actions of the contract ends on October 1st. It will have 6 months. If it gets pregnant, she will receive a delay. Suddenly, the Archduke leaned over and whispered in her ear that if she was scared, then he could leave at any moment. Elizabeth did not believe, asking for whether she could definitely leave at any moment, to which she received an affirmative answer. While she is safe, she will have enough time to find a way to return to Argon. Now she cannot lose a single chance, since she had the opportunity to get out of this captivity. Suddenly, Elizabeth said that she was no longer going to run away, since she has an obligation to him. A few days later, they decided to officially play the wedding, connecting their bonds by law, so that everyone knew about it. Elizabeth thought that if Andre saw this, he would have come in complete confusion from what was happening in front of him. She remembered how her brother told her that she would definitely find her the best man on this continent. This person will be kind, who will take care of her as a treasure that is more expensive in the world. She will have the most beautiful dress. They will receive a blessing in front of everyone, and they will have the best wedding. He organizes the celebration more luxurious and grandiose than that of the emperor, so that everyone around envies them. Therefore, she just must promise him that she will recover a little health before this great event. At that very moment, there was a voice of a priest who said that, as a representative of God, he accepts marriage vows. And now, in confirmation of the oath, they must kiss. This statement made the girl startle. However, in this way, they will show that their oath to God is not lying, and they carry sincere motives. After that, a small pause came, during which the girl thought whether she should take her first step. Meanwhile, Reget looked to the side, noticing the emperor, who carefully watched them. He remembered how he asked him if they really needed to marry, because it was just necessary to give birth to a child. Neuer replied that it was better to make a child and marry Miss from a noble family, which will be worthy of his family. If he had not chosen to demonstrate his feelings for the princess, everything would now be completely different. But he should not think that everything is so bad, because you might think that he hid anger at the princess, but this is not so. It was after all that she seduced him to survive. He was used as a fool, so they are now in this situation. And now, looking at his bride, the man asked himself whether he was true, or was it his true feelings? When Elizabeth approached him, she whispered that they could just pretend that they kiss. At this time, the Archduke tried to understand whether this is a craving or instinct, and what he could get from this marriage. Suddenly, he stated that if they went for it, then it was necessary to do everything properly without pretending to be everyone. Maybe this will be similar to the release of sins for daring to capture the princess at his discretion. After that, the man kissed her, thinking that if so, then he agrees, and it makes no sense to hesitate. When they finished, Reget looked at his soldiers, who were shocked by the unusual behavior of the captain. Then he looked at Elizabeth, hearing how the priest said that they officially became husband and wife. Suddenly, a man with a stone face acquired a surprised girl by the shoulder and abruptly pulled her to him. The ceremony was completed on this, after which the guests began to diverge a little. I congratulate them on marriage. Some time later, Ivesta asked what kind of urgent business was there. Reget Duke decided to leave Noisiers after the wedding. Elizabeth smiled awkwardly, and answering that something seems to have happened in the estate, and the matter did not tolerate delay. However, the maid immediately translated the topic, said loudly that she looked so excellent in that dress, and her husband did not even really have time to look at her, such a block that could not appreciate the true beauty of the bride. Having lowered her head, Eliza said that perhaps she did not look so beautiful that he looked around. Ivesta was very shocked by these words, asking, did she not see how knights looked at her?